Look, I have enough trouble talking about my own journalism. I'm not an ombudsman for Vanity Fair. I'm not going to critique it. I can tell you what the story said. It quoted a number of former staffers for her.
Unnamed. How, do you make a practice of using unnamed sources with a clear agenda, as these obviously did, either to try to get themselves off the hook for blame or to try to destroy her because they want to work for opposing candidates in the future? Would you ever put that in a piece in Politico, Mike, without at least acknowledging that these unnamed sources have a clear agenda? Would you ever do that?
Well, what Politico did was call some of the people who worked for the campaign, and our Jonathan Martin has posted a story in which William Crystal of the Weekly Standard accuses Steve Schmidt, who was the senior advisor for Governor Palin, of being one of the leaks, of being someone who talked. And something that Jonathan reported using named sources in Politico was late in the campaign, there had been a number of critical comments. The IT professionals who worked for the campaign.
I get all that. Mike, we're getting bogged down in details, and I'm not that interested in you to critique this Vanity Fair piece. That was the reason why you were on at that particular moment, to discuss this, or at least that was the subject that was being discussed. And I'm asking you a point-blank question. Would you have ever done journalistically what Todd Purnam did throughout this piece, using unnamed sources with an agenda, without at least acknowledging that agenda in your piece? You, Mike Allen, would you ever do that on Politico?
Well, what we did on Politico was use named sources, and
so you're saying no, you would not have done what Todd Burnham did in Vanity Fair.
On Politico, we used named sources,
but
to talk about how people were interviewed for this story about the GOP, in which
I get all that. People in Washington, D.C. obsess about that stuff. I was simply asking you a question about journalism. You seem to want to duck it. My guess is, based upon reading between the lines, is what you're saying is you would not have done what Todd Purnam did journalistically, yet you did not say that on MSNBC. Now, last question, because we did play 3 clips. The other clip that we played from you is a clip where you refer to Governor Palin's campaign as a circus act, and you say that she could not possibly be taken seriously, and Joe Scarborough ends up agreeing with you. On what are you basing the notion that Governor Palin's campaign was a circus act? That's a pretty strong term for a journalist to use.
Well, a number of the people who worked with Governor Palin, who traveled with her on the plane, who stayed back at the campaign headquarters to defend her, felt that she was ill-served by some of the things that happened in the campaign.
Okay, so wait a minute. So what you're saying is that she was not served well by the McCain campaign or her advisors. What you said on MSNBC made it sound like she herself was a circus act, and that therefore she cannot be, and would not be, or should not be taken seriously as a national candidate. How do those jive? How are they consistent, Mike?
Well, and this would be true on the Democratic side or the Republican side. A lot of times the vice presidential candidate doesn't really run the show. They are, to some degree, at the mercy of strategic decisions, financial decisions that are made by the top of the ticket.
Absolutely.
And there's a number of people who have supported Governor Palin in the past who would like to work for her in the future, who
We've gotten
worked for her on the campaign, who feel that the campaign was not a model campaign.
Of course it wasn't, but you went on MSNBC and pandered to left-wing nut jobs watching that network by making it sound as if you were referring to Governor Palin as a circus act and essentially writing her political obituary saying that she could never be taken seriously on a national stage again. That's very different than what you're saying here. How do I make those two things make sense together, Mike? How are they consistent?
No, well, that would be a very erroneous misinterpretation.
Well, then explain it to me. I'm asking you to explain it to me. I'm giving you the opportunity to explain what seems to be a dramatic inconsistency in your two statements.
Governor Palin was brought in very late in the...
I get all that, but you called her a circus act on MSNBC and said she could never be taken seriously. Nothing you've said on this show comes anywhere close to bridging the gap there. You're not telling me what she did wrong. What did she do to make herself a circus act? What did she do to make herself not be taken seriously on a national stage? Give me something, anything of substance. Give me some meat on the bone, Mike, that would substantiate a journalist of your reputation making a statement like that on national TV.
I did not refer to her with that term. I was referring to the campaign. and especially a vice presidential candidate, but also a presidential candidate. Sometimes they're at the mercy of decisions that are made by others.
So it wasn't her fault then, is what you're saying.
And
so then why wouldn't she be taken seriously on the national stage again if you were acknowledging it's not her fault? You clearly said that she would not be taken seriously. In fact, you asked Joe Scarborough whether he agreed with you, and he said yes. So explain that, Mike.
There's a lot of people that you'll talk to who have supported Governor Palin in the past, would like to support her in the future, who do not feel that the campaign was ideal.
I understand that, but how is it her fault? What did she do to disqualify herself? What did she do to make herself not a serious person in your mind? What did she do, Mike?
I disagree with you that everything that the campaign did was her fault. I think that
I didn't say that. You did. You implied it on MSNBC this morning.
It's a mistake, whether certainly the vice presidential candidate, but also at the top of the ticket. Even though they, at the end of the day, bear responsibility for what their campaigns do, I don't think you can say that it's the personal fault of every person.
But you blamed her. You said she can't be taken seriously. On what basis did you make that statement?
Well, I mean, if you think that her campaign, that all of the coverage of her has been ideal, I know from your past work that you don't think that you don't think that if you were to sit down and plan out, okay, how am I going to introduce this governor to the nation?
Right.
How am I going to have this governor covered, and in what sort of venue, and what sort of topics? I doubt that you would mirror precisely the coverage.
I understand. I couldn't agree with you more, and we're going to have to leave it at that.